Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Ojai City Council and Ojai Redevelopment Agency Successor Agency for May 10, 2016 to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Blatz.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Warren.
Here.
Councilman Vora.
Here.
Councilman Hayes.
Here.
The record will reflect that Councilwoman Clark is absent.
Okay, and that's an excused absence. Could Councilman Haney please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any presentations on the agenda tonight, but Councilman Lara wanted to make a couple of opening remarks with regard to Mother's Day, so I'm going to ask Councilman Lara to proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Blatz. Welcome, colleague, fellow council members, staff. First off, happy Mother's Day to anybody out there in the audience, here on the dais, and everybody that's watching us from their house. Primeramente, le quiero felicitar a todas las madres por Día de las Madres, que aquí en los Estados Unidos lo celebramos el fin de semana, pero en muchos países latinoamericanos lo celebramos ahora el 10 de mayo. Y es un día muy importante para reconocer el amor que ustedes nos dan cada día. Y por eso se lo agradezco muchísimo a todas las madres que nos están viendo ahora y este día. I read a post last weekend, somebody's Facebook post that just grabbed my attention. It went something like this. At 6 years, Mommy, I love you. At 10 years, Mom, whatever. At 16, my mom is so annoying. At 18, I can't wait to leave this house. At 25, Mom, you were right. At 30, I want to go to Mom's house. At 50, I don't want to lose my mom. At 70, I would give up everything to have my mom with me. As a young boy, I was attached to my mom. I remember we took a family trip. I was about 8 years old to Mexico. And in this particular trip, my mom had to stay behind for a medical treatment. No one could stop me from crying that day. Matter of fact, we traveled by truck. It took us 3 days to get back home, and I think I cried those 3 whole days. That's how much my mom meant to me at that age. I never thought her love could get any bigger. When I was a teenager, and I think I could speak for all of my siblings, when we were all teenagers, we took my mom for granted. And I'm pretty sure we did not treat her with the respect that she deserved. Matter of fact, some of us did some really dumb, stupid stuff that most people would probably give up on us. But through those challenging times, my mom was one of the most compassionate, strong individuals that I have ever met. I never knew her love could get any bigger. When I graduated from high school, I was ready to leave town. Penn State, here I come. For the most part, I had a great time in college. But from time to time, I did get a little homesick. But there she was shipping her frozen burritos. They were so delicious. I could smell them right now, and it just filled my heart with love. I never thought her love could get any bigger. When I graduated from college and came back home, I came back home to aging parents that needed assistance. all my siblings and I and our extended family were there to assist my mom. We didn't know how serious her medical issues were. What started with normal washing dishes, sweeping the house, putting away her laundry, turned into constant assistance for her. Looking back at it, I think about we just did these things because we loved her. But the truth is, each time we helped her, she would crack a joke. Or near the end of her living life, she would give us a smile. She made us feel comfortable with the situation. In 2011, she passed away at the age of 62. The funny thing is that I still learn from her every day. Because she's here, just not physically. This is what mothers do. They give that unconditional love. Some of us have different relationship with our mother, but the love is there, no matter what. And some actually don't have a relationship with their mother, but they have grandmas, they have aunts, they have sisters that carry that love. Because their love only gets bigger and stronger with time. La quiero mucho, Ama. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Mayor Blatz, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lara. That was very well said. Thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to the part of our agenda for public communications. This is a time when we welcome the public to talk to us about anything that's not on the agenda. We usually can't act on it unless it's an emergency, but we can discuss it briefly and perhaps put it on a future agenda. So I do have some speakers cards for the public comment section of our meeting, and the first one is from Mary Forrest. The second one is from Mary Forrest. The third one is from Mary Forrest, and then the fourth one is Jamie. So I think what I'll do is let's start off with Mary, and let's give her a little bit more than the 3 minutes.
I'll go first since I have three. I don't mind at all.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I have down as the first one, excuse me, bike transportation in the Ojai Valley and
Okay.
Ojai, right? After listening to this last special meeting to some degree, I saw how minimum bike transportation could be so helpful and one of the ways to cure some of the problems. We have a huge amount of traffic, and if I heard right, the plants and things, the absorption is affected by that great traffic, meaning it also affects probably, this is a guess, but probably affects water. There are so many problems from within our whole country, actually, but in cities from vehicles, and gas, etc. So I want to specify that, or I want to point out that bike transportation is extremely important to help with a great deal of our problems. And I don't think it should be pushed to the side lightly. That's my first one on bike transportation. Is there
Okay.
anything else anybody wants to add on that one?
Yes.
Just for your information, we actually have a update going by a consultant for a master plan for enhanced bike transportation.
Good.
The Complete Streets Committee is right in the middle of that. They're about to get a revised, get the revision back from the consultant that's doing that. You might want to check the agenda for the next Complete Streets meeting, and I believe they'll be, I was just told by the chair of that subcommittee that they expect to be reviewing that, and it's a pretty ambitious expansion, and there's a lot of people looking at the best way to do that expansion. So you might want to check that next meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, number two.
I don't sure you have your name. I apologize. I don't see a name thing there. The number two, considering the importance of bikes and bike transportation, there is a huge problem, and I know this firsthand, from bike theft, both bike parts and the bikes themselves, all the way at minimum, all the way up and down the bus lines. Amtrak, people take the bus come from Amtrak up to Ojai. And many people who use the bike path also one way frequently will take the bus. So, and but I do know a lot of them have been going to Amtrak also, so I want to specify that it's not just bus, it's also Amtrak. And again, I bought a new bike about a month ago. At minimum, 3 parts at different times have been stolen. And at another time, another person actually went over and lifted my bike up off the bike rack as if he was going to take it until I yelled at him. And anyway, my opinion and what it looked like to me from all these things going on was that there is actually what I would call a racket, a business, perhaps a big business, in bike theft and bike part theft. And there was a question of something even being taken within a particular bike shop. Because I don't know absolutely it was the bike shop, but that's when I first noticed it missing, was when I was in the bike shop. I also believe that bike shops are involved in this bike theft. Now, I was talking to somebody about this problem, and they told me that in Florida, during the crack epidemic, there were huge amounts of bikes and bike parts being stolen, which they were blaming on the students, but also connecting it with the crack problem, with the drug problem. And I think there's probably a few more agents involved in it than just the students and crack. However, we also have a drug problem here, as I've been told, and I think it needs to be considered because trust is at number one in business success. Trust is extremely important all over the country, but we're looking at the Ojai Valley, and in particular Ojai. Trust is extremely important, and it's eroded greatly when something like that happens.
Okay. Mary, I'm going to ask Chief if she has any comments on it.
The bike theft is a problem, she's correct. So we have waves of it, and we've caught people, and we've done sting operations, and it's things we do focus and we do track. But she is correct, we do have bike theft in and around the valley.
Okay.
Other communities do as well, but we do as well.
Do we have a lot of luck in apprehending people that have done it?
No. And a lot of people don't register their bikes. They can register them over at the police department. They don't know the serial number of their bikes, so there's a lot of problems. And when we do find bikes, knowing if they're stolen or not.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment to that. When everyone asks, this happens, I can't get into the mall where I bought my bike. I can't get into the mall with my bike. And so they told me to just park it out in the bike rack, whatever you call it. And, there's a problem with that because security is looking at those bikes. If it is a big business, which I believe it is, as it was in Florida, I mean, it's huge, and it was connected to the drug problem, then putting it in a bike rack where a security camera is actually watching it doesn't mean it's better. It could actually mean it's worse. It needs to go back to the person who owns the accountability. Ultimately, it needs to go back to the person who owns the bike. And that can't be done when you don't have facilities available other than putting it in a bike rack far, far away from the person where security cameras, and you can't say that everyone watching a security camera is not corrupt. That's absurd. We know there's corruption, and if you study the statistics, there's corruption in every class of society, and there's corruption in every facet. For example, security, there's corruption. So again, it needs to go back to the person, but you need to, the person, the individual needs to be given facilities so that they can watch over their bike.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Now, number 3, facilities for bikes. And it needs to be friendly for them. And the library called the police on me because I brought my bike in. I had 3 different things, as 3 parts, including the brakes, which will kill me when I go down a hill, with not having a brake. And the library would not allow me to bring my bike into the facility. Now, there has been a couple of other places, businesses in town that have been very friendly with it, and I think that, well, let me go back here. When they called the police said, well, they're watching it on the security cameras at the bike rack. And the librarian said, no, we don't watch it, and we're not going to take accountability for watching it. But he was still insisting on me putting it into the bike rack. So it's an area where it's very bike user-friendly, if you're really interested in that. And again, for the, not only for water, but also for the traffic issue, I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you. All right.
That's it.
Okay.
That's all I
Thank
have
you
to
very
say.
much. Jamie Bennett. Hi, Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and Councilman. I'd like to start by saying we're 1 month and counting before the Ojai Music Festival as of yesterday. Individual tickets went on sale, and I invite you all, actually I was sitting back here talking to Randy, who was trying to find out the best place to buy a ticket, buy a good cheap ticket. So I urge you to call Caitlin in our office.
Not cheap, inexpensive.
Inexpensive.
And we did find 2, thank you.
Good. But I urge you to call Caitlin, and she can steer you to a good seat at a reasonable price. It's not behind a pole. We've got 3 concerts this year that are free to the public. Most people are not aware of that. That's unprecedented. Typically, there'll be 1 concert that will be free, but this year there are 3. 2 of them are for families, 1 of them's for children, and 1 of them's for a broader family group, and then 1's in the evening. And I urge you to look at those. I brought brochures. I'll give them out at the end of this. I wanted to also give you a report. We're having the retirement of the chairman of our Bravo committee, someone who is on the board of the festival and who is my boss, and it is Councilman Wyrick's mother, Jane Wyrick. And she's served in this role for some time, has done a terrific job. And for those of you who don't know, the festival supports education in the public school system, music education in the public school system, and it's a prime mover as a volunteer organization. And Jane Wyrick has been the chair of that committee, and we will miss her from that. But she still stays my boss on the board for a couple more meetings at least. So. And finally, I'd like to thank the City Council for making a donation towards the free concerts this year. We have one that will have Yola, the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, will be performing at one of these. It'll be a good concert that I urge you to come out with your families and see. And then I don't know if I can take a few minutes more about housing, because I know it's not part of my report on what's going on with the festival, but the City Council has been looking at the Airbnb issue, and I've spoken before the council.
Go ahead,
on that.
Jamie. We don't have a lot of speakers tonight, so
Okay.
I'll give you some time.
Well, I've got to say I'm very happy to report that we had 43 homeowners come and volunteer their houses this year. We always have homeowners volunteer, but we had 34 homeowners who are going to be housing 45 people during the festival, and they're doing that out of the goodness of their heart. We have 6 rentals that we have that are outside of the city of Ojai in the county in the East End. So those are not in your purview, but there are only 6 that actually fell outside of that. We did rent 11 homes inside the city, but we rented them for the month of June rather than for the 4 days or 12 days or 10 days that we needed them, because the minimum that we could get was a 1 month rental because of the ordinance, and I just thought you should know that. We do have 11 people staying down in Ventura that we would have liked to have stayed up here, but we couldn't find either the houses to be lent to us or to rent. So we have 11 people, 11 people for 8 nights. So those are 88 room nights that are going to be at a motel down in Ventura. Usually we have over 200 hotel nights in Ventura, so this is about half that this year. It's just the way it's fallen. But again, I'm only testifying on the impacts of the ordinance or an ordinance or, a proposition and its impact on us. The Airbnb or VRBO or short-term rental does have a benefit to us. I know you've got to balance also the homeowner problems that go along with that, which I don't have to deal with, but I can say I think it adds to the sort of healthy ecosystem of room availability for things like the festival and the tennis tournaments and the other things. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Speaking of mothers, yeah, my mother is quite an inspiration. She's been a long-term, passionate advocate for the music festival, and as you well know, been at it for a long time. I think you're going to miss her.
I am going to miss her, I can tell you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you, Jamie. Is there anyone else wishing to address us? No? Then I'll bring it back to council. Next item on our agenda is reports from council members. Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick, do you have something?
Yes, I do. We were just talking about the issue of short-term rentals, and I want, as everyone knows, a initiative has qualified for taking signatures, and of course their aim is to bypass the city council process and put in place an ordinance that cannot be modified or changed by council if problems arise. And it certainly does not have any backing or any official blessing by this city council. There's a lot of problems that I'm personally going to be more public about in the future with the ordinance as written. However, I was quite disappointed to see that the petitioners have put the city seal on a banner promoting, soliciting their signatures, which is, I believe, completely improper, and I'd like the city attorney to comment on that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick. Mayor and Council, I believe you'll see, and I'll hold up for the public, what's been passed out and will be available to the public upon request is a picture of a poster that I believe was next to a signature gathering table, and it reads, "Plan, don't ban, help put this Ojai petition on the ballot, and help keep Ojai vibrant with the website." And it has the city seal, and that's the problem. The city seal is owned by the city, both the copyright and the overall ownership, and it can only be used by the city with the mayor and council's approval and by staff in certain cases. The use by the proponents is illegal and needs to stop. Without objection by the council, I will work with interim city manager McClary to send a letter to the proponents demanding that they cease and desist using the city seal on a proposed initiative that is not sponsored by the city. And
I just have one question. Is that the only place is it on the petition itself? Are they using our seal?
To my knowledge,
No.
it is not on the petition itself,
Okay.
although I haven't reviewed the petition. It will be reviewed when they submit it to the, if a city clerk is seated by then, it's city clerk. If not, they'll submit it to Mr. McClary as deputy city clerk.
Okay.
With regard to the use of it, their use here doesn't invalidate the signatures, but any use of the seal on the petition itself would invalidate those signatures.
Okay.
The petition has to just be the statutorily required elements of the text, the initiative title and summary, and the other elements required by the elections code. It cannot include the city seal.
Yeah. And what type of penalties are involved if they don't stop using the seal?
The city could seek injunctive relief. The city could seek declaratory relief that they don't have the right to use it, which they don't. The city could also seek monetary damages, although it's a little harder to prove because we'd have to show that we would have made some money in the market otherwise under copyright law. But certainly declaratory and injunctive relief would suffice.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
I would hope we would support that
Yeah.
without objection. And
I'm sorry
Go ahead,
to,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm not hearing objection, so I'll work with the interim city manager to get that letter out this week.
And I just find it disappointing, that the advocates for this would They're basically asking the citizens to bypass council to legalize currently illegal activity, and now they're engaged in the illegal use of the seal. That's just disappointing.
That's a kind word to use. Councilman Lara?
I attended the Southern California Association of Governments conference. It was a good conference, and you guys were missed. I think it's always good in terms of learning what the state's doing and how elected officials are trying to work together, collaborate on issues. But I think that I'm just proud that Ojai has been proactive in terms of dealing with water issues and transportation, which a lot of cities have a lot of improvements to work on. And also, I'd like to take the Rotary Club of Ojai for putting on Career Day at Nordhoff. It was a successful event, and it's always fun to see a lot of stakeholders from the community at that day.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilman Haney?
I have nothing to say.
I've got a couple of things. The first one is that I wanted to report, as most of you know, I do sit on the board of Gold Coast Transit, and there were some issues that came up with regard to our community, particularly at the board meeting on the first Wednesday of the month. One of them is that we approved some funding. There had been some prior funding for fiscal year 2015-16 for a trolley 5-bay bus shelter. And the Gold Coast had budgeted $50,000 for that. And working through our public works, it was determined that rather than that we really needed two other projects, and both those projects were approved by the board. So we gave them back the $50,000 for the shelters, and we approved a $45,000 trolley wash pad and collection system that was needed. That was $45,000, and then a vehicle storage area sound wall for $30,000. So both of those capital improvements were approved for this upcoming fiscal year, so we should see some construction on that. The other thing that we discussed at length, and just so that for the riders of the buses, not necessarily the trolley, but the buses, is the board voted to ban all hoverboard or similar devices powered by batteries on the Gold State Transit District vehicles, the buses. There's been some problems with them exploding and catching fire and that kind of thing. So that is a general statement. It's a little more specific because I believe hoverboard is generic, but then it said similar devices powered by batteries. So the language, when it finally comes out in the regulation, will be a little bit more specific to what we mean. Like it doesn't apply to battery-powered wheelchairs, things like that, but definitely approved the ban of that, and I think that was important. The other matter that we spent a great deal of time on is on the ballot in November is going to be a request that's being put forward by the Ventura County Transportation Measure, it's called, which is going to ask for a 0.5% tax to support transit facilities and transit projects within the county. We are the only county in Southern California that doesn't have a transit tax, and because of that, we miss out on a great deal of matching funds. But there are some very specific things that this would do for us. For instance, over a 30-year period, which seems to be a long time, but nonetheless, it would generate $500,000 that would come back directly to Ojai for infrastructure improvements, particularly streets and roads improvements, which is something that's very good. In looking at the overall 1% tax that's being requested, the board did vote to support it, and not getting too political because taxes are something that are very specific and personal to people. But the board did feel after having a full, lengthy presentation by the director of VCTC, felt that this was something that was needed, and therefore went ahead and recommended that it be supported. And it does look to me, as an individual on that board, that this is something that is important to Ventura County. That is everything that I have to report on the Gold Coast. The next thing that I have is I received a stack of letters that was principally a number, and when I say a number, there's probably 20 that are form letters that are just addressed to me as the mayor and signed by various individuals, either first and last name or simply a first name. And they all, in essence, say the same thing, but it appears that the person that has kind of been asking us to do this is an individual by the name of Casey Garhan, who lives out in the East End. And she's asking the council, and I wrote back to her and said that I would bring it up at the meeting, that we should consider doing a resolution supporting the idea that there is an urgent need for refugee relocation within our municipalities, and that there is a organization that supports that outlines a specific plan of refugee relocation, which is asking us to join the Cities United for Immigration Action and inform the California State Refugees Coordinator of Ojai's support of refugee resettlement in our area. She's requesting that we do that. I thought I'd bring it up at the council meeting tonight. If the council wishes to put it on a future agenda, we can. In my comments back to her, I said that I would talk to the council tonight, but that Ojai, being only about 4.2 square miles, didn't have a lot of available opportunity for relocation of refugees. She's talking specifically about Syrian refugees. However, there was a proposal that came through a few months ago where Camp Ramah was going to house some youth refugees that we did not oppose. But I'm just throwing it out to see if the council has any interest in bringing this back. If not, if anyone wants to come and talk to us during open communication, we're welcome to have anybody come. But if we're interested in doing that, I can put it on a future agenda. That's what I told this individual I would do. And if not, then we'll just move on.
I just had a question. In your statements, you said that she wanted us to pass a resolution saying we supported it. So you're saying that means that we would house refugees?
Well, I'm unclear,
in doing the resolution?
and just for the record, I should read this. It won't take that long. Dear Mayor Blatz, as refugees continue to pour out of Syria, and given the sad reality that a new refugee crisis will probably emerge somewhere else as soon as this one ends, it is of utmost importance that we do all we can to create support systems to accommodate the urgent need for refugee municipalities play a crucial role in the resettlement of refugees. Without the support of places like Ojai, people like those leaving Syria today will have nowhere to go. It is because of this that I urge you to introduce a resolution declaring Ojai's support for the resettlement of refugees and outlining a specific plan of action to join Cities United for Immigrant Action and inform California's State Refugee Coordinator of Ojai's support of refugee resettlement in our area. I look forward to hearing of your swift and immediate action. Sincerely, Casey, and it's spelled Garghen. I believe it could be A-N. That's the request.
Okay.
So does anybody have an interest in bringing this back? No?
I could make a comment if I'm allowed to.
Is there any problem with that?
Sure.
No? Sure, make a comment.
I had a vehicle. First of all, just to make it short but quick, I was an RN and I am now homeless. And I had a vehicle for which, of late, recently, someone smashed the windshield in and tore off the door. And supposedly a policeman came to me and said, that he had towed it, for which, I won't get into it, but at any rate, I felt it was a terrorist act. It was very violent, a lot of anger involved with that. That gets into sometimes immigration and people coming in. Just something to consider. The second thing is, I had a camp in that I was told was private property, both by the surveyor office in Ventura and also by Sergeant Arthur, the late Sergeant Arthur, and therefore he didn't have me leave, and that's where I have to live. And I just yesterday I was told by the sheriff department from Ojai that I have to abandon it within a week, or else he's going to arrest me. Well, I couldn't possibly do that since they stole or destroyed my truck, and my bike now is having parts stolen every week, including the brakes. How in the world am I supposed to transport any of that material out? I'm just giving you, the facts that are on the ground, that you keep pouring in immigrants and you can't take care of your own people. I paid in taxes as an RN. I was emergency room and ICU mostly for my 20 years as an RN. And I have had both housing withheld from me, and I've also had assistance, monetary assistance, and errors right and left. A system needs to be corrected and made to work for people who put money legitimately into their jobs and are told that it's going to help them in a certain way, and then it doesn't at the end. My aunt also lost some of her medical assistance she was told she had by a big, huge corporation. The point is, immigration is not advantageous to everyone when it's kicking out the people who have put in already legitimately.
All right, thank you very much for your comment. I'm not seeing that there's much support for moving this forward, so I'm just going to pass it down to our records manager so she can just have it filed. That's all I have. Anybody else in reports of the council members? No? I'll move on to the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on it? Roll call, please.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
Councilman Lee?
Yes.
Councilman Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ware?
Yes.
All right, we don't have any public hearings on our agenda tonight, but we do have two discussion items, and the first is request for proposals, building inspection, plan check, code enforcement services. And I see Ms. Wald coming forward. Are you going to give
Yes.
us the report?
All right. Good
All right.
evening, everyone. I guess I should say that this has been before you before. I think you probably would remember when it was here in October last year. And since that time, really no changes have been made to the staff report or the materials contained in the staff report other than to just update generally the time frames that are in here and to give you an update on the type of volume and the number of projects that are going through the department. That's basically to give the people who are going to propose on this an idea of what the kind of volume, the kind of work they'd be proposing and actually doing should they receive the proposal, or I guess the contract. So I'm open to any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Wald?
No.
No?
Oh, yeah.
Reserve my comments for discussion.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Is there, I don't have any speakers cards on this agenda item. Does anyone wish to address us? No? Okay, I'll bring it back to council.
I've been thinking about this for a while, and I want to make some comments that are actually quite broad about the entire matter. I have some handouts, if that's okay. And I want to start out by saying, I think I have enough, that I think if one looks at the city code, And I next have the handout for the city code. Let's see, I have some more copies here. There we go. My reviewing the city code and the Citygate Management Audit Report has brought me to an issue that I want to raise with you, with my colleagues. And that is that I think we should consider, for various reasons, having what other cities do have, and especially small cities, and that's to consider having the building department, the building official, answer directly to the city manager. Reasons for doing that, first of all, I will draw your attention to the first part of my handout on Municipal Code 1-6.202, Director Defined. In our city code, it says, for purposes of this article, director means the head of any city department which is charged with responsibility for enforcement of any provision of this code. The building official, as defined in section 9-1.203C, are any person as the city manager may designate. In other words, this is contemplated in our city code. I also want to point out that the other pages of the city code reference the fact that the building official is one of three, I believe, three officials in the municipal code designated with primary interpretive authority, the other two being the community development director and the public works director. And it seems to me that it's a city officials with direct interpretive authority should be answering directly to the city manager. I think that the small city should have as flat an organizational structure as possible, which means, not stacking those kinds of responsibilities vertically, but having them horizontal, answering to the city manager directly. I think this would amplify the city manager as being the primary coordinating authority between major cities' functions, and important to have clarity as to accountability for sensitive functions such as code compliance. So I want to just raise the issue that I think that we ought to consider whether from a policy standpoint it makes sense to have the building official, as one reads the code, thinks about ourselves as a small city, review the Citygate proposals to answer directly to the city manager. Next, I have some supplemental RFP comments that I handed out. Number one, I think there is a certified code enforcement officer designation by the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. I know it's an optional part of this RFP, but I do believe that our code compliance officer should be supervised by the building official and should have third-party certification. That's consistent with theme 5 of the Citygate report, that we need to do better work with staff training and development. Number two, if we have an alternative, and I get mixed messages, I don't know the definitive answer, but if it's possible that we can bring in our fire code reviews under building permits in-house, so we're not having to have people deal with Camarillo, by the way that we specify the qualifications for the building official, I think we should consider it, just in terms of improving our service to our constituents and to our clients. Because if you're not a resident of the city, but you're applying for a permit, you're a client of the city. And I think we should try to do it in-house if at all. If there is an alternative, I would like more information about that. And furthermore, if you look at the Citygate report, the primary clustering of priorities, the thing that they focused on the most, if you look at all those reviews based on priority, is the ability of the city to do an automated permit and tracking system. And I would like to make sure that we have an RFP, the qualification that whoever we do as part of the RFP, that they demonstrate the ability to have knowledge of and or implement automated permit and tracking review systems. That was the highest consistent clustering of priorities in that Citygate report. And those are the suggestions I want to make.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick. Any other comments by the council?
Mayor Blatz, I had a question for Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick. In the staff report itself, I'm trying to review and see where in here it says that the one that he's supposed to report report back is to the community development director. I couldn't find any specific language it was the language I understood from this staff report is that it was, that there was a collaboration between not only staff, departments within the city, but also different agencies. So you're proposing that we firm up that language and somehow include in there that they report back to the city manager?
Yes, I think that that's actually more consistent with the way our municipal code is written.
Okay.
That be clear that the building official answers directly to the city manager, and then the city manager then is responsible for coordination of these major functions. I just think it would I would like us to consider that as an improvement to the structure of the city right now.
I could support that.
Mr. Livingston?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to just make a quick point. One, we are going to be considering the budget a little bit later, and Mr. Wyrick brought up the point of the building and planning tracking software. We have included funds in this budget for the implementation and licensing of such software, so I just want to make sure that you are aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question of staff, and it might be Kathleen, I'm not sure. In looking at this is a consulting contract, and what is on our agenda is a request for proposals, building inspection, plan check, and code enforcement services. Is that specifically to hire a building official? Is that what we're looking at? Or a company in which we're going to glean a building official as well as these other?
Right. It's a company that would provide us with a qualified, certified building official, along with all the other duties.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Go ahead.
Kathleen, I think the biggest goal behind this RFP is to validate the cost of doing business. Am I correct?
That's correct. It's to make sure that the RFP doesn't imply there's anything wrong with the person providing services at this point in time. It's just a wise thing to do periodically to make sure we're getting good value for the services being provided.
Are the services being provided today quality services?
I believe so, yes, I think that we can always do better. I think that that's why there's optional tasks and jobs actually provided in the RFP. For instance, code enforcement is in-house right now, but, whether or not someone could provide that cheaper to the city through part of this RFP is why there is an optional task. I think the services, I think the department is in my opinion, struggling with space constraints. We're very, very much space constrained in where we are. And because of the volume and not really an increase in staff per se of any significant measurable amount, we're struggling all the time. If the council were to consider dividing the departments, we'd have to be separated because there's only one counter, there's only one permit tech, there's only one secretary, and you can't have two directors supervising the same people. So, it would be actually dividing and creating two departments and two administrative staff and two techs, which is fine. But I'm just saying that there's a lot that with myself and the suggestions, I guess I'd say, that I've given to the interim city manager regarding how to actually improve service and get it functioning better, all included moving us to actual space where we have a large counter, we can meet with people, we can sit down and talk about their projects, where we have qualified techs that are able to issue permits and actual read plans, and a division of that tech from the clerical function. It's very unusual to have one person providing what I consider paraprofessional technical services and also clerical. That's a very rare person that can step out of doing minutes and agenda preparation over to reading plans and issuing permits. And that's what we have right now, and that's one of the reasons it doesn't work. It's just a hybrid person that doesn't exist.
So that plays into Councilman Wyrick's statement about creating its own entity, as well as communicating directly or being managed directly under the city manager. So that's so you're agreeing with Mr. Wyrick's statement?
I'm not necessarily agreeing, I'm just saying it's how it's functioning right now isn't working. There's just not enough space. There's not enough technical expertise. I don't think there's a problem with my personal opinion is I don't think there's a problem with the building official. I think the problem is at the paraprofessional level. There is not enough counter people to go to the counter and deal with people on a consistent hourly basis that is meeting the needs of the city.
And that's requested in the RFP, that we're going to look for a company to provide all those services along with the additional personnel, and then we have to figure out where to house them. That's what I'm hearing?
If you want to provide the kind of service that I hear from the community that they want from my department, we need to have competent counter staff that can answer questions when people come in. And that's not at my level, and that's not at the building official level. That's really at the building tech level, building planning tech level. And that's where the hole is in the department. The building official does plan check. He doesn't perform inspections. He doesn't really attend meetings except for a few occasionally. So it's really at that level where the hole is.
Has Mr. Stewart's company offered to provide that service to us?
No. There was.
Have we asked him?
Yes, we have. Yes, we've had conversations with it. There just hasn't been, at one time he offered, he offered and there was some talk about it. But then, and that was with Mr. Clark and I think with the interim Mr. McClary both. But I think that there's just not been a definitive answer on what funds would be given to my department and how the new structure would actually play out. I think there's also some concerns about existing staff and the conflict between, city staff and contract staff because, obviously we have a person in staff right now that's the senior building planning technician who also does clerical functions. So they're kind of a three-hat person, so to speak.
Well, again, that's what I'm trying to touch on here is if we're putting an RFP out and we're clearly stating what our needs are, and I'm just trying to go back to what we have existing and why we haven't tapped into that source to provide those services so that we can see, is that what we need? Is that going to work? And how will it impact the existing surroundings? I'm just asking that.
No, I think it's a very good question. I think that it really gets back to, Steve Stewart and I both have talked to both the interim city manager and the previous city manager regarding the space constraints. We can have more people in there, but we're tripping over people as it is. There's one person can be at the counter at a time, and the clerical functions all involve that counter. So if a person's helping someone at the counter and Sherry wants to go do something in the counter, you're in the way. And that's been brought up for probably 18 months to 2 years that's been ongoing, that I've expressed that issue over and over and over again, that we cannot function in that really small counter. It isn't even big enough that
I understand
Okay.
that. We're kind of going in, we're just talking counter space now.
Well, no, I'm not trying to be liberal to the point. I'm just trying to say that we can get more people in, but where do we put them? There isn't any
I understand
space,
that, but I guess what I'm going back to is the fact that this has been an ongoing issue for us for a couple years now.
It has.
And the fact that we've had an opportunity to try and fix it, my concern is that we just haven't fixed it, that we haven't given Mr. Stewart's company an opportunity to bring a tech in, first of all, to see how it can interact at that desk, and to see if it would enhance productivity out of the CDD department. Aside from that, and I'm not questioning you, I'm just saying there was an opportunity and we didn't take advantage of it.
Well, I want to clarify that point for a minute, because this RFP goes way back to October and September. And my understanding from the previous city manager was that it was on hold and that I couldn't do anything because it was on hold, okay? So maybe that's a misunderstanding that he imparted to me, I don't know.
No, that was council direction to put it on hold until we got through the city gate. And I'm sorry to interject here, but I think we've gotten way far afield from the discussion on the RFP. Quite frankly, we've gone right into the budget discussion here, and we're touching on a whole number of things that I'd like to address through the budget, including how to address the staffing needs and the space needs and everything else that Ms. Wold has addressed.
Great.
I don't know that we ever had any direction to try to address the staffing needs through the contract with Mr. Stewart. We would have needed to bring that back or had some direction from council to do that in order to expand that. I'm not saying that we couldn't do that, but again, I think the idea was, originally going back to last year, was that council wanted to see an RFP. They felt it was time to go out and do that again to try to ensure that we're getting maximum efficiency here, not that we had any concerns with the current consultant. And again, that had been on hold until we got through the city gate. So now we've got this back, we're bringing it back to council. Certainly council has an opportunity at this point to massage this, change this, or take it any direction that it would like to. I would just like to have an opportunity to speak to some of the staffing and space needs under the budget discussion. 'Cause
And I agree with that, and I don't want to, I don't want to argue this point, but council did not say do an RFP, and RFP came to us. So I want to be clear on that. We did not tell anyone to go out and do an RFP for building and safety. It came to us that there was a need to go out to bid, and that need came from you, if I believe, Mrs. Wold, or from the city manager. It did not come from the council. So I just want to be clear on that, okay? And then the thing that I'm trying to talk to here, Steve, is not, I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about personnel and space and all that, and I know you've thought clearly on it, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. I'm just trying to say that I believe that there was an opportunity here and we might have missed it. That's all I'm trying to say here. The second thing I just wanted to touch on is going back to where we are with your department, and while we're having a discussion, and someone let me know if I'm wrong in it, or if I'm out of bounds in it, but we have an issue also with code enforcement. Right now, I get asked all the time that who directs code enforcement? Who directs code enforcement?
Well,
that person reports to the community development director.
Right. And who oversees the code enforcement officer? Who trains them? Who interacts with him on a daily basis? Who deals with his issues and concerns regarding the community?
so it's both of us. So I'm responsible for Mr. Cornell's supervision, his performance evaluations, his day-to-day activities. He goes to classes to get trained. Mr. Stewart, so I'd say the city attorney and I both look at the letters that he does. The city attorney has developed templates for him, and Steve monitors his day-to-day inspections and where he goes on a day-to-day basis out in the inspection field.
So to me, that just creates a lot of gray, and that also creates a lot of confusion. I'm just, again, we're just having a dialogue. It's not.
No, it's
I'm not
fine.
pointing fingers at anybody, but that's a big concern in the community. One of the things I'd like to do while we go through this RFP process, if we can,
I would just like to also say, though, I just want to clarify this point about the lost opportunity about with Mr. Stewart, is his contract doesn't provide for a technician, and part of, I didn't bring the RFP forward, the previous city manager suggested that as a way for us to redo his contract, provide for opportunities for him to do that, also allow him the opportunity to increase his rate and to see whether he was competitive with that. But I would like to say that, in the last 3 or 4 months that we've been working, Mr. Stewart has indicated to us that he's not interested in providing this RFP, and he isn't interested in providing services to the city any longer. And so it's been difficult. That's happened 4 or 5 times over the last 6 months, and it's been difficult to then, if someone's not going to provide services, to continue to have them bringing more staff in. That's also been an issue.
good. So, just one last question. What I'd like, or one last statement, I'd kind of like to see, is there any way that we can, while we go through this RFP process, is there any way that we can, I know we used the word moratorium earlier, and Mr. Wyrick said moratoriums aren't good for the community, but I'd like to pull back the code enforcement activity and maybe make it driven by a call to action or complaint-driven versus our code enforcement officer driving around and looking for issues. I'd like to suggest that, and I'd like an opinion from someone else on the council. And the other thing I'd like to do is maybe see our code enforcement officer take a look at the list that's generated and is sent to planning, and maybe you two sit down and review it and actually remove, when I say remove, just put them aside.
Okay.
Issues that we're not going to be challenged with right now, like fencing and hedges, and just set those aside and actually look at the past citations that he has written and see if there's a way of going back to these people that we've written the citation to and help them resolve these issues. Again, as a liaison to planning, you know, I bring these up all the time. There's 250, if not 300 of them. I'm constantly asking, how come they're here and they're not removed? And I think there's an opportunity right now, if we are going to do an RFP, to take a step back, allow our code enforcement officer to actually receive better training, to actually receive better guidance, and actually help them to be a part of the solution versus the gentleman that's out there as the enemy, and that's what he's perceived as right now.
Can I-
Do you agree with that?
I do. Can I just give you a brief?
I've got a question for Matt. There's two issues, where the agenda item is our approval to authorize an RFP. Councilman Wyrick has brought some things forward about a reshuffling of straight lines to the city manager. And now Councilman Haney's brought up some issues about code enforcement. Are these topics we can be discussing?
Yes and no. With regard to, but the latter item can be brought forward later, and that's why I was jumping in there. Sorry to cut you off, Ms. Wold.
No, that's fine.
Mayor and Council, the discussion about how the building official's position should be structured is appropriate for tonight's discussion because part of the RFP would be the contract terms, which would include who is the city's manager of that contracted position, whether it's the Ms. Wold as community development director or Mr. McClary as interim city manager. So that piece of the request is within the bounds of tonight's discussion. With regard to the idea of suspending code enforcement or modifying code enforcement priorities to reflect more of a complaint-driven approach, that exercise of where the priority should be based, unfortunately, that wouldn't be a decision you could make tonight, but certainly Councilmember Haney's raised the point. It's worth considering. That could be on a future agenda for the council to consider whether to provide that firm direction to the code enforcement
Then
compliance
I would-
officer.
I would just like to add one thing to that. Then in our discussion regarding this RFP, and for clarification, I'd like to see that code enforcement position be given to the building and safety official and removed from the CDD director's purview so that we remove this gray between the two bodies managing one. So I think I can ask for that. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
that could be
in
done-
the RFP discussion?
The one thing I would note is a point to consider is that at the moment, the code compliance officer is a city employee, and there are issues to consider with regard to having a city employee supervised by a contract person. It might make sense to have the direct line of authority be to the city manager with input from the contract building official. Or perhaps you look at the city manager. The council doesn't have the power to adjust the code compliance officer's status, but the city manager has that power.
I have one question of Mr. McClary. We're asked to authorize the issuance of this RFP tonight. What do we need to do to the RFP, if anything, if we really do want to consider having the building official report directly to the city manager? Or is this a topic that we can put on a future agenda and the RFP can go out as it is? I mean, do we need to have the discussion of the direct line between the building official and the city manager decided before we can issue this RFP?
Can I just make one point before you answer that question? The reason I brought it up is that it says right here that the selected firm will provide turnkey services under the direction of the city's community development director.
Right.
So this, this is inconsistent with
Right,
what I was
I
suggesting.
understand, but what I was...
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. What I'm saying is, can we just change the language of the RFP to say that it's under the direction of the city manager, or do we need to do something else internally to decide that at a separate time?
No, I think you can make that change tonight.
Yes, and it would be modifying the text of
Right.
the staff report, but more importantly, the attachment B to the RFP, which is the draft contract.
Okay.
And I'm
Then,
looking for the exact
with
line
regard
that
to that,
modify.
I would like to get a comment from Mr. McClary as to his thoughts with regard to that change.
Well, it was interesting, I actually was looking into this and actually spent some time today reading through the municipal code, including through some of the city manager duties. I don't have any concern with, certainly with the ability of our community development director to manage these positions. I do understand the point of Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick in terms of trying to, get that horizontal consistency. I don't have any great objections to it. I would say as it is, the city manager is frequently involved in discussions with the community development department and the building official. Certainly that's not going to change going forward. I think it's mainly the matter of ultimately who that person reports to. It's interesting, the current contract is actually written so that the building official does do work at the direction of the city manager. And then internally within our structure, we have that person reporting to the community development director. So again, just looking at the current consulting services agreement, I don't think what we're proposing to do here is either inappropriate or too far afield from how we're operating today. And I do think that it could provide some clarity going forward.
My question is, to follow up, the reason that we would make that change is because we want the building official to report to and be under the direct supervision of the city manager.
Understood.
Our current contract says that, but then the city manager's delegated that responsibility to the community development director. I guess because I don't really see how the two functions fit.
Right.
Does it create any difficulty when you have a director who's in charge of community development and a building official, and it's two separate departments? Is that functionally, does that make sense?
I don't see why not.
Okay, then.
I mean, one of the things I've really tried to, and again, we all have specialized functions, we all have our specific duties and responsibilities, but one of the things I've really tried to emphasize is that we are all working together as a team. And so ultimately, to me, at some point, those divisions kind of fade away. So, I mean, obviously, we need to have clear lines of authority. Obviously, we need to make sure that we're not, overloading responsibility on any one person. But again, given the level of involvement that the city manager already has working with those two officials, I don't see that as being a major impact in terms of time and functionality.
Okay. Then, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Before we get into more formal proceedings, Mr. McClary, I'd like your reaction to the certification issue that I raised, that there is a third-party certifying agency in California called the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. They have a certified code enforcement officer training program. What do you think of that at first blush? I know that you may want to look into it further, but I was wondering if your thoughts on the certification requirement.
Well, I think it's a good one. I think one of the things we've been talking about is trying to get staff more training, frequently we're putting people in a situation with not a lot of background, not a lot of training, and kind of asking them to do quite a bit with that. So, I mean, always there's considerations about, obviously there's some budget concerns there, although I can't imagine that it's very significant. There's always a little bit of time involved in terms of, sending the employee away for training and what do you do in the meantime for that. But again, that's something that you can work around and manage. Then the other thing, just to be completely transparent, and I'm somewhat being devil's advocate on this, is just to remember that sometimes it can be challenged to draw in qualified individuals to work for the city just because of our distance from the population centers, and we tend not to pay as well as some of the other larger organizations. So if you have that requirement for the certification, you've either got to find somebody who's already got that coming in, or they're willing to go and get that and take
That's what I
those
was thinking,
steps.
maybe you have we have a policy where a person would have a timetable with
Right.
city support to achieve that certification.
Sure, yeah, and that's usually a good way to achieve that, so. But again, if council's willing to support giving the budget to be able to do that, again, I think it's really important that we try to elevate the training and competency of our staff as much as possible, and makes it easier for everybody.
That's a great idea. I'd also tie it into his pay.
Mayor Blatz,
Laura?
Ms. Wold mentioned something about the current building official going through trainings. Could you specify what kind of trainings those are?
The current code enforcement, code compliant officer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he has to have current training on, it's like the actual parameters for being able to walk on someone's property and those types of things, property rights, et cetera. So he just completed that. But he is part-time, and you know, the training is something that's pretty minimal. He's just doing the basic classes at this point. And yes, it was through that organization, I believe, the California Code Enforcement Association, yeah. So he has done some, you know, making sure
So
that
he's already doing some training with that organization?
He's done the minimum.
The minimum,
The
okay.
minimum, yes.
And
Yes,
and
sir.
are we paying for that
Yes,
currently?
we do. It's required as part of his job, so we do, the city does fund it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have questions about what Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick has suggested in supplemental to RFP, because I feel like, first of all, I do want to say that I would support putting an RFP. I think that it's about time. I think it's a good practice to do anyway, just like we do audits with different agencies. We put in an RFP, I think, every 3 to 5 years with different agencies. I think it's just a good practice. In terms of the review for fire safety, do we have a lot of those reviews go to Camarillo right now?
Mostly, yes, we do, because the city isn't a full-serve city. When a person comes in for development review through the planning side, the development review side, yes, it's their responsibility to go to Camarillo and get the fire department conditions and approval.
Is it fairly easy to do in terms of finding someone or giving them some training
You mean for us to do it in-house?
in-house? Because he's proposing a
That's what I
building
was-
official should be qualified to do the reviews.
So I wonder, my understanding is you can have building officials qualified to do that in-house rather than having Camarillo do it, so we're not having to send people that far away to do it?
Well, you know, you
Is it
could-
possible, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, so let me just clarify, because, you know, I'm just not sure we're all talking the same thing here. So for the building official to look at the structure and to look at that as it relates to fire is certainly easy enough to do. There are other things that the fire prevention officers do when they look at a project. So they look at a project, they look at egress and ingress and driveway widths and all these other things that they have to look at. So whether we're working on a subdivision or we're looking at a group of housing, they have all those roads and exiting and distances and where a fire hydrant goes. And I don't know that is something that there's as Interim City Manager McClary indicated, there's a limited amount of time in the day, and there's a limited amount of time that we can do these extra activities that you pour into this mix you're doing. And that's a lot of training and a lot of additional job duties. I find that right now, the biggest challenge that I have in the department is getting people that are qualified to even know. When I came here, the building division was not even taking in asbestos clearance. And I was surprised and shocked. I mean, I'm come from a planning background, and even I knew that was something that should be going on. So the people that were already in place here when I came here, there's lots of rules and regulations in the county as far as air quality, water, sewer, stormwater, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we are pretty much limited at our capacity, so I don't think you're going to be able to pour more into that building official pot and get him to do more things without having a second person. That's just the way it is.
It's not a
I
second
completely agree
person.
with that.
Yeah, I don't think Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick is asking to provide two people.
Not against that, no.
Just to
I just want to
jump
make the
in.
point that it's, a lot of fees are being charged. People are having to do a lot of driving. They're having to do even more delays. And if there's an alternative that we can fund properly from fees, it would be an improvement in client and customer service.
I will say this, too, I mean, and I don't mean,
I'm sorry, Mr. Summer, I cut you off.
No, I started to cut you off as well. If I could just jump in here, Ms. Wold. Just to note that with direct answer to your question, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick, the city does have the power to do these fire safety reviews in-house or via contract, as long as the individual has sufficient certifications and the right qualifications, which may well require paying for it, but it's certainly within your power to do.
I just want to interject real quick, Kathleen. I believe that Mr. Stewart has the certification.
he may I'm not trying to
Have you
say,
asked him?
no, I believe he does. I believe he does as far
It was
as,
something that we could have been doing in-house,
I don't believe so.
okay?
I don't believe so under the framework. We talk all the time and work collaboratively with Mr. Stewart. I think he knows all the things that he needs to do for the building part of fire suppression. I don't doubt that. But I don't know that he's trained to know where a hydrant goes, because I don't know that he knows the county fire departments where that type of issues. I'm not trying to belabor the point or anything, but to go back to Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick's issue, not only is it not customer friendly, but the county actually refuses to do proactive through the planning process, review of projects. They do it at the building permit stage. So what happens is, and you would know this very clearly, that we've had to come back through a couple of times and modify planning approvals because they don't want to do it through the planning process. So it'd be really great to have it in-house.
Exactly.
I'm just trying, I'm not, and I want to make it very clear, I'm not saying anything against Mr. Stewart's qualifications. I don't know that he has access to the infrastructure, and how they call out hydrants or access or turnarounds, that type of thing. He'd have to work with them to do that, I'm assuming, unless for some reason.
I'm not sure, but I just know it takes a certification. I know he's certified. I know he's certified, and I know that he's been doing this for 30-plus years. I might be under the opinion that, again, we might have something already in the barn that we may not want let out.
I agree with that. And I'm not at all trying to say we don't. I'm just trying to say that there's a working relationship that has to be there between the county fire and us, and I don't know that exists yet.
Is that requirement going to affect this RFP?
I didn't see it mentioned anywhere in terms of a needed qualification, along with it had under the option on the code compliance officer did not include the certification. So I just brought it up because I didn't see it. Not that, I don't know if it's, has to be in there in order to be, but when when RFPs are being evaluated, you normally want to be looking at the submission, the qualifications that you're looking for. That's all I brought it up for.
I just wanted to add one more point. I just want to make this clear. The code compliance officer has never written a citation, not one, according to Mr. Stewart.
Okay.
I mean, that's what he keeps on telling me. He does stop, I'm sorry, what? Go ahead.
With regard to the number of citations issued by the code compliance officer, that's a little far from the
Well,
agenda.
I just wanted to make it clear, because that is a misnomer that's out there and quite often stated.
Okay, so I had one more question. So getting back to this, the building official and the fire certification, it seems like it would benefit us if we did put it in the RFP. And again, to try and keep that service in-house. Right now, is that a fee that we're paying out to the city of Camarillo?
The applicants pay the city directly.
So they're doing it.
They have to
The
pay,
county.
write a separate check
To the county, correct.
to the county.
Right.
And they're still waiting for county approval, too.
Right.
Well, I just got to say that often the approval,
Problematical.
thank you, I'm looking for the right word. It is.
So-
I think
so-
we could do a better job in-house.
Okay, so that's a benefit. I guess the last thing I have in this, Kathleen, because I believe Mr. Stewart's done just a great service for us. I really believe that. Did he look at you and look at this RFP and evaluate it in any manner or make any suggestions to you regarding this? If he's not going to bid on it, it might be beneficial that we have someone who's actually performing the job be a part of writing.
Well, let me just,
This one, I jump in here because the Government Code Section 1090 has a fair amount to speak about this issue, and there's a couple of recent cases, including this exact type of issue where a significant fine was imposed. An individual has to be on one side or the other of his contract with the city. So Mr. Stewart could only be involved in the city's preparation of this RFP if he does not bid on the contract. If he has any desire to bid on the contract, he cannot be involved in the preparation of the RFP. I don't know if he's made that choice yet, but I just want to make it clear that he has to make that choice up front. If he's involved in the preparation of the RFP, Government Code Section 1090 prohibits him from bidding.
I understand that. I was just trying to put it back to Kathleen, because she's the one who made the statement, that he's made the statement over the last 3 or 4 months that he isn't interested in being a part of this, that he's not interested in rebidding. So again, if I was taking that into consideration, that he had no desire to be a part of the future Building and Safety Division, it would behoove us to have someone with his background and his experience and his certifications to help us review this. I'm just asking, have we asked him? in any
no,
way?
because I keep on asking him, I think you'll probably change your mind and want to bid on it. So I think it's a disservice to the city to completely exclude him from being able to bid on it. That's my personal opinion. And I mean, obviously, it's been in the packet, it's been publicly distributed. He could look at it if he wanted to, but I'm trying to leave it open where he could. That's my opinion.
Great, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right?
What ramifications are there if we include that, would we include the certification for the fire review the same way that we do the certification on the code enforcement, where it's a preference but isn't a requirement? Or do we want to actually include the fact that they have to provide the?
I would make a recommendation that we include it as an option, only because it does a couple things for the city council. One, it might potentially limit the pool of people who apply. They might not all have that certification, which you might say, well, then why would we want them? Well, there may be a particular firm who's very, very strong in the other areas, but who simply just can't perform this particular function. And so in which case the council might say, well, we'd rather go with that firm just because of the overall strength of their proposal and their background. Also, if you put it as an option, I think it gives the ability of the council to quantify exactly what that cost is going to be and to be able to evaluate it in that context in terms of the benefit that it's providing to the community. So that would be my recommendation, that you add it in as an option, much like we have for the code compliance.
That'd be on page
services.
2-8 under optional elements, possibly add 2 optional elements, one on the code compliance officer certification and our obligation to achieve that, and the second would be the fire safety there. Just add 2 more optional elements. Is that your recommendation?
Well, actually, I think we would add the fire safety optional element, and then I would actually recommend under the code compliance option that we include in that they
okay.
have, that they
Just
need
add
to have
one,
that California
expand
Association.
and add one, okay.
Right. However, I guess the other thing that we would want some clarification on, and I do agree with it, is to add some language about the qualification to be able to implement the automated permit tracking and review system. So
Yes, at least
I
some-
would not
agree.
recommending that as an option. I'd like to
Right.
put that
Some
within the
experience in that.
mandatory elements, if I'm understanding, if that's the
All
council's
right.
desire.
Well, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I am too.
So am I.
Yeah? All right, then we need to have a motion.
I'll make a motion
Okay?
and see where we go with it. I'd like to move that we modify this request for proposal on the following, along the following, with the following items. Number one, that it be modified so the language is consistent with the building official being a director answering to the city manager. Number 2, that the building and safety code compliance optional element include the either certification or obligation to achieve certification within a period of time that the city manager feels is appropriate. That, let me see if I remember everything, that the fire safety element that we discussed be added as an optional element, the capability of doing that, and that the language be included that the building official should be qualified to implement, have experience with and the ability to implement a digital automated permit tracking and review system. And that's the end of my motion.
Okay, does he have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? No? Roll call, please.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Warwick?
Yes.
Councilman Laura?
Yes.
Councilman Haney?
Yes.
All right. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. This is another discussion item, and it's presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. Mr. McCleary, is Mr. Livingston going to do this, or are you going to?
Actually, I'd like to, although I'll give Mr. Livingston an opportunity, but I'd actually like to step out to the lectern and
Okay.
address the council.
Great.
Yeah, go for it.
Steve, they all left you.
I was going to say, Mr. Mayor and members of the council,
We've lost the quorum, so we have to pause.
yes, we will wait.
Right.
In that case, I'm going to leave.
I know, you,
Maybe I should take the opportunity to speak about my mother.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I mention it because I celebrate always the 10th of May.
Ah,
Yes.
right.
And that's what I said in Spanish.
Yes, yes. Well, I have the great fortune of my mother's birthday falls very close to Mother's Day, so we get to celebrate her twice in very short order. I can tell you're all anticipating a very long presentation, and I'm sorry to tell you that's not going to be a very long presentation this evening, so.
Good.
Since you were dealing with numbers, I was afraid of that, so I had to.
Right.
Well, we're going to give it a moment until Councilman
Sure.
Lara gets back.
Oh, would you like a copy of this picture? Bill Moses was sitting next to that. Should know better.
Do we I'm assuming we're waiting for Councilmember Lara.
Yeah.
I guess he had it.
Well, we might have hit like the record shortest meeting tonight, so it's a good thing we're doing a little filibustering here.
Yeah, no, I think we've had shorter meetings, but I expect everyone to applaud as Councilman Lara. Hey.
Besides, the faster we get out here, the more it'll agitate the one
All right.
council member who wasn't here.
Mr. McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, stop me from going into my comedy routine. With all seriousness, this was a very daunting task for a new city manager and an interim city manager at that. I'd be the first to admit that I would have loved to have had 6 months, 9 months under my belt to get a little bit more up to speed. But as we learn in life, you never really have time to get fully up to speed on anything before the issues pass you by. So this was an exciting challenge and opportunity, but certainly a difficult one. And we're still putting together some of the pieces to the budget. And again, this is really the first look, the first presentation of the budget to City Council. Typically at this time in the budget process, that's what we normally do from the city manager's office. We give the budget to the council without a lot of comment and give them a chance to digest it, review it, come up with their questions and ideas, and then we get into it more deeply as we go into the workshop. So let me, before I get into some of the highlights here, just to talk a little bit about the calendar coming up. This is May 10th. This is the city manager's presentation. The next scheduled matter that we have for the budget is we have a closed session. We're asking for a closed session on employee compensation to follow the regular meeting of May 24th. Then we would not be coming back for another discussion on the budget until the first regular city council meeting in June. It falls very late in June this year. It's June 14th. We're proposing a budget workshop at 6 p.m. as a special meeting prior to that regular meeting. And then on June 18th, during the regular meeting, we would have the public hearing because you needed to hold the public hearing as part of the regular meeting. So June 14th, we do the budget workshop at 6 p.m. and the public hearing as part of the regular meeting at 7 p.m. Then depending on how far we get along, council has some options. We have in the calendar a optional budget workshop for June 28th. That would be 6 p.m., a special meeting prior to the regular meeting. And then tentatively, we have the city council adopting the budget on June 28th. We've also put in there as a placeholder, just to hold it, if needed, a special meeting on June 30th. That would be the last date of the fiscal year. So if nothing else, we need to make sure that we take some action by June 30th to have an operating budget beginning July 1st. There's also other opportunities if the council wanted to call other budget workshops. We could do something on June 7th or perhaps June 21st or any other date if the council wanted to call a special meeting and do a budget workshop on that. So that's the basic calendar. So into some of the nitty-gritty of it. In a lot of ways, trying to continue what we've done in recent years to try to maintain the commitment to improving and maintaining the city's infrastructure, particularly the streets and the roads, and also our city facilities. However, we're also trying to get back to addressing some of what we've been hearing a lot about, concerns about just being able to get the work out and the staffing levels that go hand in hand with that. We've heard many times tonight, also in the joint meeting with the Planning Commission, that we're having issues in terms of being able to move the workload out quickly. And so this budget is an attempt to begin to address that and get our service levels and our staffing levels back up to where they had been several years before. I don't have any magic wands. I can't make money grow on trees. And again, we've been very conservative in these budget projections. I'm very fortunate that Mr. Livingston and I are pretty much in lockstep with our fiscal philosophy. We're both pretty much have the same approach on things. We're very conservative in our approaches, and yet we're also always looking for ways that we can be smart about spending our money so that it improves our efficiency and makes our jobs and makes everybody's, makes our ability to provide services to the city better. So, couple key points here. Overall estimated revenues in the general fund equal expenditures. So what we have proposed to the city council is a balanced budget. There's basically not much wiggle room in there as we've drawn it up, as we proposed it. And part of that was so that we could try to continue to maximize the commitment to the infrastructure while also trying to address what we see, or what I see as some staffing needs to be able to provide the support to the community that we need. So again, we have a balanced budget proposal before you. Our big three revenues, which we call property tax, sales tax, and the transient occupancy tax, the TOT. Compared to fiscal year 15-16 total revenues, we're estimating property tax going up conservatively 2.5%, sales tax going up 2%, and transient occupancy tax going up 3%. And again, we feel that those are very conservative projections. We don't ever want to count our chickens with money going forward and then find ourselves short. Couple minor things. The estimated gas tax, that continues to go down every year. It's being reduced by $18,000, so that's a revenue projection that's being reduced. We still have a lot of unknowns in terms of the overhead charges, the successor agency. We continue to wrangle with the Department of Finance on what they're going to allow in terms of administrative costs. So we have that comparable as flat compared to 15-16, but there are some complications with that, which I'll have Mr. Livingston speak to a little bit later. I wanted to emphasize a little bit here, talk about the staffing. And again, we just talked about the RFP, so we know for building services, we know there's an option in there for the code compliance inspector position. We also have that as a ongoing city employee, and we have that continued to be funded in the budget going forward for next fiscal year. The planning and building contract services do remain at elevated levels due to what we're seeing as a temporary but continued surge in development activity. So that means we have a lot more in fees coming in and a lot more that we would need to pay out. So you'll see that those numbers are still pretty high. And again, we anticipate probably in a few years that we will get past that bubble, but right now we're still in the midst of trying to deal with that. So one of the key things here is I'm proposing that we, to a certain extent, restore or bring back or create 3 new full-time positions. One is an accountant position in the finance department. We had a similar position several years ago, which we phased out after some retirements. We've been trying to work with the existing staffing levels, and we really feel that we're down a full person there, and so we're recommending the addition of a full-time accountant position. We're also proposing to eliminate one maintenance worker 1 position and instead provide a maintenance worker 2 position. So this is not an additional position to Public Works, but rather it's a restructuring of the department. Part of what I'm looking at is to try to find ways that we can retain and that we can attract and retain our good employees. And this is an opportunity for a stepping stone for a qualified employee to take that spot. We did have a maintenance worker 2 position several years ago, and we phased that out after that individual had retired and basically added back another maintenance worker 1 position. So again, loss of 1 maintenance worker 1 and creation of a maintenance worker 2. The maintenance worker 2 has some supervisory functions, and there's not a significant cost, but there is a cost increase obviously with that higher position. We're proposing to reduce the number for contract staffing in Public Works because we'd like to go out and fill what has been a vacant senior maintenance worker position for a number of years. We had a longtime employee who had been out on a workers' comp leave. They've been out for several years now, and they are going to be retiring in June. So we have that position. It's been funded previously, and we'd like to, so that again, that is not a new position, but we'd like to, again, get back more towards having permanent employees doing the day-to-day work as opposed to using contract and temporary staff. We're also proposing a clerical position for the planning and building department. Again, we were speaking earlier in the RFP about the building and safety services, about that need. I agree with the community development director's assessment that we need additional clerical support. This would help not only the public, but also the director and the other staff in terms of their coordination, their ability to get the work out faster. Right now, we have a part-time position that's providing that clerical services, so that would go away, and we're proposing a full-time position. Overall, retirement costs are up about $8,000 as a result of actuarial adjustments by the retirement system. We saw a rather significant increase last fiscal year, and it was not nearly as bad this year. We are proposing a third set aside now for pre-funding of the post-retirement medical, so it's another $100,000 that would go to that pre-funding. That eases the city burden on what they would have to pay down the road for those retirement benefits. We're proposing to continue the sinking fund for vehicle replacement at about $65,000 a year. Also a sinking fund for equipment and information technology at $40,000 a year. I also should note that the legal expenses are unchanged. That remains, we're proposing that remain at $135,000 per year. The one thing that you don't have in your budget that we're still working on and still making some fine-tunes on, doing some fine-tuning on, is the capital improvement plan. So you do not yet have that. Again, we're continuing the practice of trying to put aside 20% of the TOT towards that. So I know Mr. Livingston, Mr. Grant, and I are working on that. And Mr. Livingston, do we have a timeline on when we think we'll be able to get that out?
I believe that we should be able to have a draft out to all of you by the end of next week.
So we're getting
We're pretty close, actually. I just didn't want to rush it and have some errors in there because we pushed it through. So
I realize that's a big part of it as well, and I know that you don't have that picture tonight. So again,
I might add,
sure.
though, that we do have the proposed budget for the capital replacement plan, or the capital improvement fund for next year, which is part of that overall capital improvement plan. So we have this next year, that's included in the document that you've received, in Fund 31 and Fund 33. So.
Well, in conclusion, as I said, it was a fairly daunting task. But there was one day in particular where I'd spent a lot of time, still spending a lot of time thinking about the budget, about staffing, about the needs, about how we continue to maintain our streets and roads, how we continue to make sure that we're doing what we can to perhaps get back, get to that 50% reserve level that we'd like to see. We're still about $385,000 short of that as of the most recent report. But overall, things are awfully good in Ojai. We're not looking at having to do severe cuts. We're not looking at having to borrow money. We're not looking at having to seriously curtail services. Instead, I think it's an opportunity for us to continue to maintain and improve what we got, and to try to grow the staff a little bit, get a little bit more sophisticated so that we can be a little bit more efficient in our delivery of services. I realize the addition of the 3 full-time positions is a lot to ask for, and will be a lot to absorb in the budget. I also realize that, I just need to state this real clearly for everybody, that at some point, we're probably going to see this surge in development activity abate. And at some point, that means we're going to need to reduce the staffing levels as well. So it's painful to think about that going forward, but like I said, in the meantime, we're in the midst of it right now and trying to deal with it and trying to serve the public. So as I started to say, I spent some time thinking about this budget and was agonizing, quite frankly, over where to go, what to do with it. And I woke up one morning and it all just came quite clear to me in terms of what I needed to do. And so I think it's, so the path became pretty clear to me in terms of, I think, what we need to do to be able to address the needs of the community going forward. Having said that, as my community development director, Ms. Wold, very accurately described, we have space constraints here at City Hall too. And that means finding enough room for everybody and being able to function in a way that isn't in conflict. We've got one conference room, we've got very limited counter space, we have a small lobby. We do, so depending on how council wants to go with the staffing adjustments, and I didn't want to be too presumptive here, we do have a one-time repayment of city loan from the former redevelopment agency. It's estimated to be a repayment of $208,600 coming up this fiscal year. If the council is amenable to the reconfiguration and the addition of the staffing, my recommendation is that we take a look at using a portion of that money, an appropriate portion of that money, to address some temporary office needs here at City Hall. And again, I don't want to go too crazy. I don't want to overestimate. I don't want to propose anything permanent. So again, I think I'm going to need, depending on the direction of the council and where you want to go with the staffing, we could certainly stay as we are. But I'd like to recommend, if we do bring on some additional positions, that we look at bringing in a modular office building. Maybe it's just to house a couple of people. Maybe we could take a whole department and move it over there. My idea would be that we would try to keep it here on the City Hall campus. We don't want to have two different points of pay for people. We don't want to have people trying to walk all over the place or travel multiple blocks when they need to come in and get services from City Hall. So my idea would be, if the council is amenable to that, appropriate size modular building, probably located across the street here. We feel that there's enough flat space there that we could work something in there without needing to do a lot of improvements, a lot of land site improvements. And again, the idea would be that it would be temporary to get us through this period, or as long as it's so needed. That is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or receive any comments at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick.
Mr. McClure, I think you're a little too self-effacing. It's a pretty stellar job to do, what you and Mr. Livingston have already accomplished, given the situation you found yourself in. So thank you very much, and congratulations to both of you. It's a really good start. I appreciate that very much. Couple very specific questions. I very much agree and support the notion that, as it would be responsible to do, permanent versus contract employees represent a better mix in terms of the chemistry and culture of City Hall. And there was one of the Citygate, there is this whole issue of the senior planner in the
Yes.
Community Development Department.
Yes.
Is this budget continue with attempting to make that position, have that position filled by a permanent employee?
Yes.
Or are we going to continue contract coverage on that?
No, we are still doing everything we can to try to get that associate planner position filled, and we're continuing with those efforts almost daily.
Okay, I was asking that.
Right.
And on space issues, I understand your reasoning about the more efficient to have an integrated campus rather than different points of contact for the public. I do understand that. I mean, certainly that issue was raised by the management auditors about the possibility of using vacant space elsewhere, but I understand the issue. Do you have any sense of the square footage involved that you're looking at in terms of a modular building?
Well, that's why I hate to be wishy-washy, but it really depends on the staffing levels. I mean, I started to go down that road here in the report, and really felt that I was getting a little too ahead of myself, because I felt like I was starting to put a lot of time and effort into coming up with a building plan, not even knowing if council was going to support the additional staffing.
I understand.
So my thought at that point was to get a little bit of feedback from council, and then certainly we need to come back with some detailed proposals in terms of who we would put in there, what would it look like, what would the structure be, where would you put it, what site improvements, if any, would you need to do?
And you've touched on one issue that I think, as an elected official, I'm looking forward, and I know we need to be sensitive to, and that's, you mentioned how it looks.
Yes.
I can see that being an issue.
Certainly.
That the public is not going to appreciate something. There are certain types of modular buildings that are different from others, and certain types, I can just see the neighborhood being up in arms about if we weren't careful about certain aesthetic qualities.
Understood.
So, I appreciate your sensitivity to that. And then my last question on vehicles. Cities mostly own vehicles, they don't engage in leasing programs?
Yeah, I can't
And
think
there's
of any
good reason-
vehicles.
That is correct. We have a fleet of vehicles, and we have those on basically a 10-year replacement plan.
Okay. And is there a reason that is what cities do mostly, as opposed to basically contracting out some of the maintenance and repair aspects under a leasing program?
Well, some of the maintenance repair aspects are actually contracted out.
Okay.
I mean, we do a lot of our stuff in-house, but we do contract out some of our maintenance for the trolleys, some of our maintenance for the vehicles. We have basic things here. If it gets a little bit too advanced, we send them down to, Ventura Ford or other places to do those things. Typically, the cities will hold their vehicles. We don't use our vehicles a whole lot.
Right.
Which is an issue, but we do use them. We do use them regularly, but therefore we get a longer useful life on these vehicles until they start deteriorating because of lack of use.
No, exactly. That's my
which is an
point.
issue here.
The lack of use is actually a good thing under leasing programs.
Yeah, it's something that the city has not looked at previously, to my knowledge. Of course, I've only been here, for a year and a half, roughly, and it is something that I would certainly be, open to looking at. We haven't done that in the past, but it's something that we could certainly explore.
I'm not saying I know the answer, I just wanted to raise the question, because the other thing about the Citygate management audit, they mentioned there was a special point there about being an issue with having vehicle access, vehicle availability. I'm not sure what the details of all that's about, but I did notice it. And I'm sorry, I can see you want to say something.
I would suggest that issue was a little bit overstated.
I can believe
Okay,
that.
however, that has been 100% completely resolved because we now have a vehicle that's dedicated for the code compliance officer to be using, and we have another vehicle. We purchased a new vehicle for the fleet that is a city hall vehicle.
Right.
So anybody else here can use it at all
So
times.
that-
And that was
that's-
really the issue is we have our code compliance officer that needs to be out in the field doing things, but we also have a few errands we have to run to the post office or to the bank or, various different things. But it was something that it wasn't as big of an issue as it was made out to be.
Okay,
in reality.
I believe that. And so my only other comment is there more flexibility as we go through? On the leasing issue, you have flexibility, but on the other hand, you maybe it's more expensive long run, life cycle cost. I just wanted to raise the issue.
Yeah, it's certainly something we look into. We purchased 2 vehicles this year, and previously it's been probably 3 or 4 years since we purchased our last vehicles. We anticipate purchasing a couple of dump trucks and things for the public works, road efforts and they're the heavy duty stuff, not the regular around town things. So we're planning to purchase 2 of those in this coming year. So it's something we could look at, but typically with those, you get them dinged up and banged up and everything, and I'm not sure how well those would suit themselves to leasing, but the other vehicles might.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Any comments from this side?
I'm just ready to dive into what you provided. I'm excited, so thank you.
Councilman Haney?
Steve, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for, and when we were having that discussion with planning, it wasn't to impact or disqualify the work that you had already done or that you had met with Kathleen and Rudy on.
Oh, I understand.
It was just in the moment, it was just issues that obviously had come up and we just wanted to dive into.
Understood.
But your preparation is excellent. I remember what I had commented on this the other day because I was driving to work at about 6:15 and I was bored, obviously. I'd already figured out what we needed to do. So I was thinking about what we could do here. And one of the things I thought about, remember, was Rudy, on our first budget presentation, a profit and loss statement. And it just, it's just a quick appraisal of where we are, what we've done. And then as you get into the nuts and bolts of this book and the binder, it's just going to give us even more information. But it would be something that could be put up to the community quickly, factually, and still provide this, which is the bulk of what you guys have done. And again, it just, it seemed like that just I was bored. So I was just throwing that out there.
I'll make a comment to that, Councilmember Haney, is actually, I stripped out the P and L portion of what's in here. I actually have it put together, at least what I have is, I mean, not a traditional P and L, but I have a thing,
Right.
our total budget, general fund revenues, budget fund expenditures and so forth, and coming down to a net, and I did it for each of the different funds, and so that would be very easy to provide for you.
Okay.
Well, you're right. There is a schedule in here that Mr.
I was pointing Mr. Livingston to page 29, which I think provides at least the top-level overview.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the high level, and this goes back to, what our estimated revenues are at the beginning of this year and, what our plan
fund
is. And it comes
balances.
through, it gives you the total for the city-wide down on the bottom line there to see where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do have information available for each fund within the city. This kind of groups them together, but I can certainly provide that to you.
No, this is excellent, actually. This is probably something that I was looking for.
Okay.
Again, something that just gives you a quick assessment of revenues.
Where we are in total,
Right, and
yeah.
a quick assessment of expenditures.
Mhm.
And then the nuts and bolts are going to be provided in as we go through this. Okay? That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I, too, am very impressed with what you've been able to put together. One of the things we pride ourselves on in Ojai is that we have a very responsible physical philosophy, and I think that's very important. And the last few audits have proven that we manage our funds well, and I see no reason that that's going to change under the documentation that I've seen thus far with this budget. So thank you. You're to be complimented for it, and we look forward to going through it. So thank you, Mr. Livingston. Thank you, Steve. You're welcome.
Before we adjourn, there are a couple of comments that I would like to make, if that's okay.
Okay.
First of all, I know Mr. Wyrick will be happy to hear this. I am planning to bring this to this finance committee here, which I believe Mr.
thank
Councilmember
you for
Lara
mentioning
and
that.
Councilmember Wyrick are both on that committee, finance, whatever we call it, here at the city, finance and budget committee.
Budget and audit, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But I will be scheduling that meeting hopefully in about 2 weeks or so. So we'll be able to get a chance to have some early input on it this year. Last year, we didn't quite get as early of input as we would have liked to. Another issue is that we have, as in past years, we have set aside an amount for community organizations at a high level to give council the ability to do that. We have received information from the museum on what their requests are for this year, but we anticipate that there will be other organizations providing some requests for some of those
Right.
funds. And at the budget workshop, I believe we were going to bring those forward at the June 14th workshop. Is that?
That was the idea.
That was the
correct.
idea there. So we should be having that coming forward. One last thing, as Mr. McCleary mentioned, we are having some issues with the redevelopment successor agency. The Department of Finance did not like the idea that when AB 126 was passed and they dissolved the redevelopment agencies, they put a provision in there that allowed excuse me, cities to have a minimum of $250,000 or 3% of what their revenues were for the redevelopment agencies. So we have a small little agency here, and we only have, not that much money, and so they decided that they didn't like that, and they got the legislature to pass some revisions to that starting July 1st, 2016, that places severe limitations on the amount of administrative fees that can be paid to an organization. Because of several issues in our current ROPS that we submitted, they disallowed all of those administrative fees, which include fees for the attorneys, fees for staff time, fees for, city overhead, all the things that we would have traditionally put into there. Even though we've been reducing those over the last couple of years, we have filed an appeal with the Department of Finance, and we anticipate hearing back from them later this week or the beginning of next week. My gut feeling says that we're not going to win because Department of Finance has shut down every opportunity to recover funds. And I believe that, so that's going to put us at a shortfall for this next year, and which, if they eliminate all of those administrative costs, my comment and the attorney's comment to the Department of Finance representatives is, okay, that's nice. Who's going to prepare the ROPS? Who's going to do the legal services? Who's going to provide all the admin services when we're not going to get paid for it? I'm not sure that we will prevail in this issue. We had requested that they give us one of the problems is we had a clerical error on a prior ROPS that reduced the amount that they paid out to us by about $100,000. And partly because of that, the calculation that's put together in the law brings us down to zero, which in all honesty, that's illogical that the Department of Finance would think that you could actually get to a zero level on there. I understand them reducing things. So if that happens, we may be having to cut back on, the general fund will end up absorbing some of the costs of the redevelopment agency. So I just wanted to put us on, notice that that's going to happen. We will have, at our next oversight board meeting in June, I plan to actually meet and to discuss this issue with the board so we can talk about where, what we do and where we go from here. So I just thought I'd put that out there so that we all understand what's happening with that. Other than that, I don't see any other issues that we really need to bring up at this time, but I'd be happy if you have any questions for me.
I just have a request, Mayor Blatz, that our citizen at large for the finance receive his packet, because or the binder that he usually does at least a week ahead of that meeting, because I know before in the past it's been supplied to him basically with no time to review. So.
Now that I know who the committee
Absolutely.
is, then I could do that. Last year I was coming in and just, running to try and get everything, taken care of because I was brand new to the city. So, yeah, we'll be happy to get that. We'll get a copy of this budget here to Mr. Clafe.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Anything else, Mr.
Just
McClary?
one thing that I neglected to mention, and in the issue of complete transparency, I think it's important for the public to hear it. I know it's in the council's report. We've also have a payroll contingency of $52,000 for potential cost of living or benefit increases. Basically, that would be so that we give a 2% raise, cost of living increase to the non-management employees. We would also propose that we increase the range for the management employees by 2%. But of course, that doesn't mean anything automatic into the management staff, because those are merit-based evaluations in terms of where they are set within the range. But again, those will be, we can discuss that a little further at the budget workshop, but I wanted to get that out there for the public's benefit. We also, Mr. Livingston and I came up with a figure for the salary for the permanent city manager, and so that is in there. We just came up with what we felt was an appropriate number, but certainly we're looking for some council direction on that.
All right,
That's the last
thank you.
of my points. Thank you.
Anything further by the council? No? All right, we're going to adjourn as the city council and convene as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency, and we have a consent calendar.
Move consent.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Warwick?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we have no discussion items with regard to the redevelopment successor agency, so we'll come back and reconvene as the city council. And oral report from the city manager. Do you have anything, Mr. McClary?
Yes, I have a few items. I'll try to be brief. First and foremost, I'm very proud to introduce our new records manager, Cheryl Shaw. Cheryl,
Welcome.
Here.
I am very impressed with Ms. Shaw. She started last Wednesday, and she is rapidly learning the ropes. Again, there's always a lot to learn in an organization, especially in a small organization where you wear many, many hats. But I have to say, I'm very impressed. She's extremely proactive. She's taking a lot of steps to try to figure out exactly what she needs to do and working very rapidly to get us caught up. So I'm very, very, very pleased to welcome her on board. She has a wonderful background. She served many years doing similar duties for the Ventura County Civil Service Commission. Michelle also holds a law degree, and so she's a very qualified individual. And again, I'm very happy to have her on board. Feel like we're getting a little bit back closer to full strength. So thank you,
Great.
Cheryl.
Welcome.
And I might add, she's a wonderful person to work with. Everybody's enjoying working with her so far.
Good.
So with that law degree, you can handle all the FOIA requests?
Let me put on the record, probably not. See, remember I turned the machine off.
No, we've already started working together on that backlog.
So again, welcome, Cheryl. I did submit a letter of support for the Ojai groundwater basin boundary modification on behalf of the mayor. That was submitted to the state, and it was received. And I also received a nice phone call from Russ Baggerly with the Groundwater Management Agency thanking the mayor and the city for providing that comment. So I wanted to pass that along. Also wanted to let the council know I have not forgotten that I owe you a monthly report. That was brought up at the last council meeting. I'm sorry I've been a little focused on the budget, but I'm going to try to get on that very quickly and make sure that we get that to you on a regular basis, so I have not forgotten that. Thank you for your patience. A couple quick recreation things, since I can't quite put that hat down. Mr. Katsas is doing a good job. May 21st, we have our recreation open house. This is going to be our third annual open house at the Sarzati Park at the rec center. So come on out for that Saturday. We'll have a lot of things going on and a lot of fun things to do, and we'll be previewing and highlighting some of the programs and some of the summer activities and camps that we have going up. So a lot of good things happening at the recreation department. Also, the recreation activity guide. Several years ago, that was distributed basically through the schools and through city offices. And then to try to get a little bit more exposure for the city recreation programs, we started doing a direct mail postcard. Well, we felt that was successful, but we figured why not take it to the next step? We were able to work it into the budget. We're now direct mailing the activity guides to everybody in Ojai and in Oakview. So those are now going into people's mailboxes. We think that will only improve the make it easier for people to find the recreation programs at the city of Ojai and get them involved. So we've also made some nice improvements over the last year. People can now go online and they can pull up that activity guide and they can click right on the listing there, and it'll take them right to the registration site. So a lot of things that we've tried to do to get us a little bit more into the digital age and make signing up and participating in the recreation classes even easier. So also wanted to quickly mention last Wednesday at the invitation of the Ojai Valley News publisher, he started doing a monthly brown bag discussion. The first one was held in Libby Park, and I was invited, as well as Supervisor Steve Bennett. He was unable to be there. Jeff Palmer with the Sanitation District, Steve Wickstrom from Casitas Municipal was there, as well as Dr. Bangser from the school district. So it was a nice event put on by Mr. Dewar. We're going to try to do it monthly. We may do it at different locations. There were a lot of people that came out from the community, and we had a very good discussion. A lot of it had to do with water and with the sanitation district's fees for the connection fees. There was a lot of discussion on that as well, which I know Hank and I and Steve Wickstrom appreciated because we didn't have to talk about our stuff. So, anyways. And then just to remind council and the public again, we have a special meeting on May 24th at 6 p.m. to hear the report and have the discussion on the Cultural Resources Committee. That's all I have.
That's the same.
All right. Mr. Summers, do you have
Yes.
anything for us?
And nothing further. Thank you.
Chief?
You may have seen vandalism throughout the community, spray paint vandalism over the course of the last month, where this individual was taunting the police and making some profane statements. One of them was, catch me if you can, that type of thing. Well, we caught him. So he'll be charged with felony vandalism, but he tagged Libby Park, Vaughn's, Starbucks, all up and down, so, but he's been caught.
Good.
You know, I'm a big fan of cutting people's thumbs off when you catch them with it's kind of hard to do a spray paint thing without a thumb, huh? What a bunch of nuts.
Anything further, Chief? No, sir. Mr. Livingston, anything?
Other than the budget here, it's nice. I look forward to working with you all on this, and I'll be out of town for a couple of days. I have to go pick my son up from Oregon and bring him back down here. But I will look forward, be happy to answer any questions that you may have to get some clarification on things, and, we'll work forward on getting us a final budget passed here.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any council members? Okay, we're going to be going into a closed session. It's a conference with legal counsel for the initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. Number of potential cases 1. Are we expecting a report?
Not tonight.
Okay. So we will adjourn to our closed session.
Thank you.